Hello? It's not on. Hello? The mic's not on. Oh, it is? Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Edith McBean, and I have the great privilege of serving on the board of directors for African Parks Foundation of America. And I'm a proud member of the Explorers Club. It's a real joy to welcome you here tonight at this historic institution, which has long celebrated bold ventures in science, discovery, and conservation. I can't think of a more fitting venue to share the story of African Parks, an organization whose mission and impact embody the very spirit of exploration and stewardship that this club stands for. I've served on the board of African Parks for over a decade, and I can say without hesitation, to me, African Parks is hands down the best conservation organization in Africa, if not on the planet. And I know this because African Parks gets things done. They manage the largest network of protected areas across the continent, and they deliver real results. They protect wildlife and biodiversity while working hand in hand with local communities to improve livelihoods and ensure long-term stewardship of these landscapes. I've had the privilege of visiting several parks, and last year I traveled to South Sudan to witness the Great Nile migration. Nearly 6 million antelope on the move. It was awe-inspiring, and it reaffirmed for me how African Parks is helping communities protect this vital natural phenomenon for generations to come. This is why I'm so passionate about the work and so proud to be on the board. Before we dive into tonight's main presentation on Rhino Rewild, we'll start with a short video that gives an overview of African Parks' mission and impact across the continent. Thank you again for being here, and enjoy the evening.
Torrential rains caused catastrophic flooding.
Drought exacerbating the hunger crisis.
Fires are still burning. The calamity of epic proportion.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liam Dahl. I am the Executive Director of African Parks here in the U.S. First, of course, let me begin by thanking you, Edith. Edith, thank you so much for hosting us here at this amazing venue and for your leadership on our board. Edith's been on the board for 12 years, and I'm really grateful for your friendship, your partnership, and of course for hosting us this evening. Also want to recognize two other board members who are in attendance today. Marvin Schwartz and Penny Ludwig is here somewhere, but thank you again as well. And finally, before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone who meant a real great deal to the African Parks community. Ron Ulrich, our longtime board chair, recently passed away earlier this year. While I didn't have the privilege of knowing Ron as I just recently joined, I heard and I continue to hear the amazing stories, his extraordinary passion for wildlife, his steadfast belief in the power of conservation. He was instrumental in shaping African parks both here in the US and abroad throughout the continent, and his legacy lives on in every landscape we help to protect in every community that we serve. I believe, and I haven't seen you just yet, his sons, Benner and Adrian, I believe, are here, and his daughters-in-law, Samantha and Marina. Hello and welcome, and hopefully I'll see you soon, but thank you for letting us share this evening and remembering your father's legacy. For those of you who joined us last year, we did an event in New York. We focused on our efforts in South Sudan and safeguarding the Great Nile Migration. This is the largest land mammal migration on the planet, protecting nearly 6 million antelope and the landscapes they rely on. Since then, we've added Garamba National Park in Ethiopia as our 23rd park, further securing this vital migratory route and deepening partnerships with the 17 tribal communities who steward that land. This is exactly what we mean when we say conservation at scale. Today, African Parks manages 23 national parks in 13 countries, protecting over 49 million acres of critical ecosystems, the largest portfolio of protected land under management throughout the continent. But our impact extends far beyond park boundaries. We are advancing a continent-wide strategy to ensure that Africa's wild places and the communities that depend on them can thrive now and for generations to come. We're not just safeguarding rhino and elephant and pangolins and lions. We're building the systems and leadership needed to protect these landscapes long into the future. Soon, we will launch the African Parks Conservation Academy, a flagship training program designed to equip the next generation of African conservation leaders with the practical tools, the field-based learning, and mentorship to manage these complex protected areas. Through our incubator program, we're helping to other conservation organizations adopt our tested systems and our best practices, expanding a resilient, connected network of well-managed protected parks across the continent. At the heart of all of this work is the core belief that conservation must benefit people as well as nature. With nearly 6,000 staff, most from the local communities in which we work, and the hundreds of thousands of people who live in and around the parks that we manage, we are creating jobs, we are providing access to education, healthcare, delivering clean water, and helping to ensure that these parks are valued and protected from within. This is what makes African parks unique. We're not just protecting land, we are shaping a movement. One rooted in long-term partnership, in African leadership, and measurable lasting impacts. And there's no story that is better to actually illustrate this than the one that you're gonna hear tonight. Our Rhino Rewild initiative, this is the largest single species restoration project throughout the continent. And to take us deeper into this effort, I have the pleasure to introduce my colleague, Donovan Jooste from South Africa, who is going to share the scale, the strategy, and the hope behind this ambitious endeavor. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the evening, and welcome, Donovan.
Don't worry, it's not a rhino. So firstly, thanks Edith, thanks Liam, and thanks to everyone sitting here for allowing us the opportunity to tell you about one of the largest and most hopeful conservation efforts occurring on the continent as we speak. I'm grateful for the extraordinary opportunity to tell our story on rewilding 2,000 rhino over the next decade, restoring the species, uplifting communities, rebuilding ecosystems, and allowing biodiversity to thrive. So firstly, a little bit about me and how I ended up standing in front of you talking about 2,000 rhino. So normally this isn't my kind of room. My kind of room's filled with four-legged creatures that eat a lot of grass. I wasn't always responsible for a substantial percentage of the white rhino population. I started studying in 2008, where guidance from my dad led me to study conservation. I completed my diploma in game ranch management and went on to complete my degree in wild dogs and wildlife management, spending over 15 years working in Zimbabwe, Botswana, Mozambique, and Angola, where I focused on project area protected area management, implementing a wide range of conservation projects and initiatives. In 2001, I joined African Parks with the hope of being involved in Luengwe-Luiana National Park, a park that I called home for 4 years, and a park that's in the pipeline for African Parks. So while I was hanging around at African Parks' headquarters, getting on everyone's nerves, I was offered the Rhino Rewild project manager role. Initially, I was a bit reluctant because managing a rhino farm had a very strange ring to it. But this isn't a regular farm, and these aren't regular farm animals. This is the largest group of semi-captive bred rhino in the world, and if we are successful, will be returned to wild spaces over the next 10 years. I said yes to the opportunity because for conservation, this is our moonshot. It's an opportunity to bring a species back from the brink, and a chance that will most likely never ever cross our paths in the future, and it may be one of the greatest conservation stories ever told. One thing I've learned in my 15 plus years working in the field is that the most ambitious conservation stories start with a yes. And tonight, I would like to show you why this story is one of those and what saying yes means for the rhinos, the landscapes where they need to go to, and all the people involved in it. So rhinos are iconic species. They epitomize strength, power, and to a large degree, even Africa. But they're also one of the most endangered species on the continent. Southern white rhinos are one of only 2 species remaining, with the northern white rhino being functionally extinct. Rhinos play a crucial role in ecosystems, helping shape ecosystems and contribute to biodiversity. But they are often the first species to disappear out of a system, similar to a canary in a coal mine. Just over a century ago, there were 30 to 40 southern white rhinos left on the planet. And thanks to conservation efforts, their numbers climbed back to around 20,000 in 2012. However, in the last decade alone, with the poaching crisis intensifying, causing a loss of over 12,000 rhino through poaching, more than 50% of the population was lost. Rhino horn can fetch anywhere between 20,000 to 400,000 per kilogram on the black market. It's the most expensive product in the world. Today, 80% of all white rhinos are found in South Africa's borders, with strongholds in Kenya, Uganda, Namibia, and Zambia, and smaller populations in Rwanda and DRC. And the good news is most of these areas will be partnering with us and hopefully joining us on our venture in the next decade. However, the species is on a decline and in real trouble. Now, this is where the story takes an unexpected twist. In 2008, a captive breeding rhino farm was set up as a commercial operation to farm and trade horn to generate revenue. Over the next 15 years, they amassed to over 2,000, but due to the international trade in rhino horn being illegal, they were unable to secure funding for the operation. In April 2023, the farm went up for public auction, but received no bids. Here, at the time, was 15% of the world's remaining global white rhino population at the risk of fragmentation and being lost. These rhino weren't and aren't just numbers. If saved, they could change the future for the species. They could bolster existing populations, contribute significantly to genetic diversity, as well as create new founder populations throughout the continent, which obviously help restore ecosystems and revitalize wild habitats. These 2,000 rhino could reverse the decline of their own kind, and they could help rebuild the wild. Rhinos maintain grasslands, which store carbon, maybe even as much as forests, helping combat climate change. The grazing patterns that white rhinos create reduce wildfires, enhance biodiversity, and stimulate tourism through income for local communities. Where rhinos are present, there's an increase in biodiversity. At African Parks, we manage 23 parks in 13 different countries. Under our management, creating safe spaces for wildlife and people to thrive. Over the years, we've successfully moved 8,000 animals to contribute to the diversity of these protected areas. Species such as lion, 500 elephant in Malawi, and we do these moves or translocations to help repopulate safe protected areas and help restore the species, bringing them back to places they had been removed from, such as rhinos in the DRC and giraffes to Angola. Given the role that African Parks plays in doing conservation at scale across the continent, we were approached by multiple parties, including conservation NGOs, government, and philanthropists, to come up with some sort of conservation solution for these 2,000 rhino. And after much due diligence and with support from donors, we were able to say yes. We bought the farm, the land, the equipment, and all 2,000 rhinos, but we bought them with one clear vision and clear intent: to rewild every single rhino over the next 10 years. And that's how Rhino Rewild was born. Rhino Rewild, and by us saying yes, is an audacious 10-year plan to rescue and rewild 2,000 rhinos and renew the habitats that they require. It's the largest multinational wildlife translocation in history. Rhino Rewild is made up of 3 key phases. Phase number 1, the rescue phase. This includes the purchase of the land, equipment, and all 2,000 rhino. It includes the ongoing veterinarian care, supplementary feeding, animal husbandry expertise, and continuing the complex and sophisticated anti-poaching measures for as long as these rhino are on project site. Phase 2, our goal is to move 300 rhinos every year to well-managed, well-protected areas across the continent. We've established multiple release sites in our existing park network, and we're working with other NGOs and governments to establish additional sites, ensuring the rhinos will be protected in their wild homes. Bringing these animals back to a park can only be done once conditions exist allowing these animals to thrive. This is central to what African Parks does, which means good governance, creating safe spaces, working with communities, and reducing threats to the ecosystem. And finally, the renew phase. Once all these rhinos have moved into safe, protected wild areas, these 2,000 rhino can supplement existing populations, create new one, helping de-risk the species at a continental level, and provide benefits for not only the ecosystem, but the communities that are dependent on them. The crux of the solution for rewilding these 2,000 rhinos lies in the existence of well-protected and effectively managed areas across Africa, which African Parks has been doing for the past 25 years. We base these efforts on 3 key pillars: biodiversity conservation, community development, and revenue generation to support the parks. We began managing the farm in September 2023, and when we got there, 25% of those rhino were in pretty dire straits due to previous financial constraints. But immediately we turned things around. We improved farm management, created our own protein-rich feed, improving grazing methods, improving staff morale where we retained 99% of the staff, and we saw 177 new births at the close of 2024. The first batch of 40 to a community conservancy in South Africa kicked off our rewilding vision, followed by other 6 sites, establishing 1 new population within South Africa, moving a total of 376 rhino off the project site in our first year. We are gearing up for some of the largest moves ever undertaken, and that will be happening next week. 80 rhino will be going to Akagera National Park in Rwanda, and later on in the year, 64 rhino will be going to the DRC, Gambela or Garamba, one of our other parks. And with recent support that we've obtained, we'll be signing for 500 rhino that will be going to Namibia as part of our rewilding project. So how does one move a rhino, let alone 2,000? Firstly, with a lot of beer. So it's a Herculean event. Imagine a single rhino can weigh anywhere from 3,700 to 5,000 pounds. That amounts to 15 million pounds of rhino we need to move over the next 10 years. It involves painstaking planning for weeks and months, just for logistics, from getting permits, making special crates, getting the veterinarian teams, the capture teams, the pilots, the trucks, the drivers, sometimes driving for 36 hours plus, fixing broken down vehicles, broken bridges that the rhinos need to cross, and the clock is ticking. Every minute, every second counts. From loading rhino in Durban or Johannesburg, chartering 747 aircraft and C-130s, stopping for fuel, this requires love and, frankly, quite a lot of attention. Here's a quick video on how we actually move a rhino. As I said earlier, rhinos are often the first species to be poached out of a system, and therefore the last species to return. Because the ecosystem needs to be ready for them, well protected, to ensure the best conditions of their survival. Moving rhino back into the ecosystem indicates conservation success. It's the final piece of the puzzle. And yes, we will need constant protection, but this is what we build at each of our protected areas in African parks and where we work. This is not a dream, it's happening and unfolding every single day, where rhinos are back in wild ecosystems, where children line the streets cheering the trucks transporting these prehistoric-looking animals, and where governments and communities celebrate their homecoming. I'm pleased to share that some of these translocated rhinos over the last year have bred, giving birth in their new wild homes. To see once farmed rhino give birth to new life in wild landscapes puts this massive endeavor in razor-sharp focus. Rhino Rewild is an accelerator for conservation. It's our moonshot of the decade. The chance to save a species, help restore landscapes, support communities, and rewild a continent. And it started with a yes. We've come this far in our first year, but we need support to see this through, to make this possible, and to protect the landscapes we work in. To rewild all 2,000 rhino, we need partners. We need visionary ones who want to be part of something that only happens once in a lifetime and who want to see results immediately. For more information, you can visit rhinorewild.org. We can help care for rhinos, send rhinos home, protect rhinos, and most importantly, make our parks rhino ready. Each rhino that returns to the wild gives back to its species, it gives back to the people, community, and governments, and most importantly, it gives back to the landscapes. Rhino Rewild is more than a conservation project. It's a generational opportunity, a chance to reimagine what's possible when we say yes. Yes to saving a species, yes to restoring the wild, and yes to building a legacy of hope. Rhino Rewild is already proving what's possible when bold ideas meet bold action. And the best part about it, we're just getting started. We hope you'll join us, not just to witness history, but to help shape it and be a part of it. Thank you very much for your time. So thank you very much for listening. I think what we had discussed is that we would open the floor to some questions if there were any. We'll take a couple of questions, and then for any other further details, myself, Philip, and Liam will be downstairs after this, and we can definitely take that conversation further. So once again, thank you very much for listening, and if there's any pressing questions, please do let us know.
When you ship them back to the wild, the rhinos, are you going to give, like pairs or singles, or are you going to ship groups and give them, X number of hectares per group? I mean, how do you do that because of the territoriality?
Yeah, a very good question. So basically all of the above. So what we look at is we look at what the current demographics are on the recipient area. So we take that into consideration. When we move rhinos, we tend to not move any cows and calves younger than a 14-month of age, just for very specific reasons. Rhinos are social animals, so they do companion quite often. So if there is a companion, two rhinos walking together, they will be moved together into their areas. Rhinos are obviously territorial. Bulls do maintain territories, and we take that into consideration. We look on our due diligence and assessment when moving the rhinos. We obviously do a security assessment, a habitat assessment, and then a management plan. And in that management plan, generally embedded is the rhino management plan of the reserve, which dictates what the stocking densities of rhino could be. And we plug those holes to the best of our abilities. There are incidences where there would be territorial conflict, and we do expect that. It's a natural behavior and it's a natural phenomenon, but we do try and mitigate those risks to the best of our abilities with the knowledge we have on hand.
Donovan, do you have a question?
I know the answers to these, but I think the other people would be interested in it. Can you give us a whole set of statistics about the rhinos? How long is the gestation period? How many were on the farm when you first took it over? How many died due to malnutrition and bad health? Just things along those lines.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean,
How much feed?
a little bit more than me, which makes me feel better about myself. Yeah, so when we took over the project, there were 1,891 rhino. As mentioned, we've moved 376. Today, as we stand here, there's 1,867. Last year we had 177 birds. This year we're sitting on about 89 birds at the moment. So they are reproducing really well, and that's obviously very like sort of or reflective of the management conditions they're under and the work that's been done. Historically, there were extremely high death rates on the project site. We have managed to bring that down significantly. So last year we had 19 deaths on the project site, a little bit of conflict, some old age. I mean, it's natural to have deaths specifically at a population that size. You know, in open rewilded systems, these rhino would be predated on or die of old age. A lot like all of us here, we don't live forever. Neither do the rhino. The one thing on the feed, we touched on it. We did quite a bit of work on maintaining protein levels in the rhino. So we've got a really good quality feed that we feed these rhino. We start on 2 kilograms later on in the dry season, and we can go to all the way up to 8 kilograms of supplementary feed per rhino per day. There is sufficient grazing or significant grazing rather on the property where these rhino act out natural behaviors, but because of the density of the property and what we've bought over since 2023, we have to supply these rhino with supplementary feed. And obviously with our goal of, or our intent of rewilding these 2,000 rhino, their well-being comes first, and that's why we supply this feed. So I think in open areas, to some of the stats we've had over 35 births today. A rhino's gestation, to your point, is roughly about 18 months. So what that means is the rhino that were rewilded were obviously rewilded in very early pregnancy stage. But it does indicate that the sort of drug combinations with the experts we're using, we partner with Wildscapes and Conservation Solutions to do a lot of our moving. It does show that we've got the drug combinations down, we're reducing stress, and these rhinos are adapting in their new wild spaces. So yeah, really exciting monitoring the data. We've obviously got stringent reporting requirements because we need to know what's happening with the population. We've got a large onus on us to take care of these rhino, and these are just some of the ways we're doing them.
How many pounds of feed a day? And how do you deal with the problem of lack of electricity every day?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's an ongoing problem. You know, I mean, pounds of feed varies from time of year to time of year, but it can go up to sort of, we said a white rhino can weigh up to 5,000 pounds, and it needs about 2% of body mass per day. The challenges on the electricity is exactly why we did make a rhino cube or a rhino pellet, that we didn't have to rely on electricity. So there's really been good interventions that are helping us to reach our goal.
Hi, I have two questions that are related to each other. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you select partners for rewilding, and then how engaged are you, and what does the sort of ongoing process of managing populations look like once they've been moved away?
Yeah, no, good. So we are guided by a Rhino Rewild framework. So this framework was developed in the process we were procuring the rhino farm and all the rhino. We developed this with a whole bunch of rhino experts, as well as the African Rhino Specialist Group. So there are some sort of criteria related to that. The criteria being, with our aim of de-risking these rhino, we're looking at areas that can take more than 50 rhino. And it's not saying 50 at once. It's we're comfortable with the phased approach, but that we can have those meta populations, and we decided on a number of 50 through much back and forth. We look at habitat assessments, what the habitat can carry, what their financial ability is to look after the rhino. So it's a really lengthy due diligence process. Once we've got an application document, we've got an advisory committee. It's a non-executive committee, but it does give us advice. It's people that are active in the rhino space, and some people from South African government. They would give us advice on the risks and the way forward. And once they've given us their input, we then take it to the African Parks Executive Committee, who then sign off or decline the move for whatever reasons. And then to your second question, it's obviously twofold. So within our portfolio, if rhinos are moved to us, we're solely responsible for those rhino. We look after them. We link into either the regional, national rhino management plan and strategies. Each country that has got rhino has a rhino strategy or a rhino management plan. So we make sure that this is embedded in that. I think the one exciting thing about this project is we've got what we call a progeny share agreement, and it links into your question on the longevity thereof. So we've got stringent reporting that every month we need to get feedback, and there's sighting scores and rhino conditions and any work done on the rhino. But what the progeny share agreement does is, for every rhino, bunch of rhino we give the recipient area, every second rhino becomes accessible for African parks to use in future sort of rewilding efforts. So while we've said we want to put a lock on the gate, the proverbial lock on the gate in 10 years, this is something that's going to keep on going, because we're really working with areas that are doing well in rhino, that understand rhino management and what it takes. And this is one of those methods to make sure that there's some sort of sustainability and longevity to what we're doing. Yeah, we'll take a last question and then we'll go down.
Hi, I have several questions. Okay, so the first one is, okay, so the person that owned that ranch, remember back in 2017, he wanted South Africa to overturn this law that would allow him to sell rhino horns to Vietnam, so he could make money, which he could invest in the ranch to adequately protect the rhinos. So my understanding is that South Africa did overturn that law, I think in 2018 maybe. So since then, it is legal for some people to sell rhino horns to generate money, which they could put back into conservation. So I just want to know, how has that worked out? That's my first question. Like, does that really work? Second thing is, I know about 10 years ago, the poaching crisis was extremely bad in Africa for rhinos. So I want to know if that's come down. And also I want to know if the demand for rhino horns in Vietnam has come down since then.
Yeah, compact questions there. So on your first question, so trade within the borders of South Africa is legal. and he did. Your summary of the scenario is correct. It hasn't had much of an impact on the financial support of Rhino due to the fact that it's not really a product that is used by the South African market. So it would be incorrect for us to make the statement to say that it's had a positive impact. Obviously, legal trade is still not on the cards and not allowed. So within South Africa, yes. Your second question was the poaching decline. Well, that was your third one, sorry. Yeah, so I mean, rhino numbers in South Africa have increased due to the stats. There are areas that are still sort of under some sort of persecution. You know, there's no golden sort of solution to this. Rhino poaching is a problem. We're aware of it. It happens everywhere. Numbers are going up in some places, and numbers are going down. And I think it's a problem that's always going to be there, and we need to take a multi-pronged approach. And this is one of them to start contributing towards that. And for the demand on rhino horn, we can assume yes, if poaching is still present, there's still a demand, and the product is still being used by the end user. Yeah, go. No, we do the internal risk assessments. I didn't say anything about in South African parks. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people, internal and external consultants that. Yeah, I mean we've taken all considerations into or all aspects into consideration when we're doing our risk assessment. Like I mentioned, we're working quite well with the African Rhino Specialist Group, with the South African government that obviously endorsed the project. So we do take all risks into assessment, and we do it to the best of our abilities. Yeah, hand-reared, absolutely not. I wouldn't go and try and touch one of these rhino. If you wanted to be my guest, just make sure your stuff's in order before you do that. So hand-rear, absolutely not. Tamed, absolutely not. The genetic makeup is in these rhino. There's absolutely nothing tame about these rhino. What was the third point? No, on the lion point. I mean, the point is to get these animals back into the open system. So predation happens. Predation happens in every day in wild spaces. When we hear comments of these rhino don't know what a lion look like. I've got a domestic dog at home, and if I were to bring a lion collar home, my dog hasn't seen a lion in 10,000 years, and it will run because of the smell of the collar. So there's definitely, and I mean we'll close now and then we'll go downstairs, but there's definitely the genetic makeup in these animals are there. You know, they're wild animals. They've come from the wild. Their instincts haven't gone, and we've seen that in our rewilding efforts. You know, and we're going to continue to see that as these rhino are rewilded. So yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, no, it's an amazing